You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 18, we discuss photography Mojo. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host Josh Galicki. Hey Josh, how you going?
Hey, good, Rob. It's been a while. I guess Happy New Year.
Well, belated Happy New Year. I mean, we're into
Belated, yeah.
February. So I have to say to everybody, apologies that we haven't got any content out this year before now, but it's been really difficult with work commitments, and I've been away for a week, and, you know, we just couldn't get the sort of diaries together to actually, you know, get something recorded. So, and we were supposed to do something a couple of weeks ago, and I screwed up the timings. And yeah, it never happened. So in amongst all those issues, we're into February, and this is the first one we've done for this year. So apologies again, but we do have lots of stuff lined up for this year. So hopefully we'll be a bit more prolific in the coming weeks. So yeah, watch out for some really nice episodes. We've got some really good stuff lined up, and some really nice suggestions coming in as well from some of the listeners. So thank you for those. You know, those we've got 2 or 3 really nice ideas that we've got lined up. You know, some to do with guests, some that we'll just talk about between the two of us. But yeah. So I think 2024 is going to be, you know, really exciting for the podcast, and yeah, it's be some really nice issues that we'll talk about as we go throughout the year. But yeah, so what we picked on today, the sort of subject matter we picked on today was really came about, I think, is something that I tend to suffer from quite a lot, is sort of losing that enthusiasm for photography, that sort of mojo, if you like. I go through sort of phases of being all enthusiastic and really creative to periods of sort of creative drought, as it were, and lacking that enthusiasm. So, you know, Josh, I think this is something that, you know, resonates with you as well. So I thought we just sort of pick that up and run with it, because I'm sure that people listening out there, you know, they'll have an affinity with it. They'll recognize, they'll recognize the feeling. So I just thought we'd pick this up and run with it and see what happens.
I have this picture of, you know, Austin Powers in the back of my mind now. And we use the word mojo. I don't know why I think of Austin Powers whenever.
But also, what's the other
swinging 60s, right?
Yeah, exactly. And and the fake British accent. Yeah. Yeah. Was it totally awesome, dude? Whatever he says. I've probably got that all wrong. I can't remember. It's such a long time ago. You're showing your age, Josh.
I wasn't born then, for what it's worth, but I do know about it.
Oh, well, I tell you what, before we get into it, let's just have a catch up and see what's been going on in the world of Josh since we last spoke, you know, before Christmas, on the podcast at least.
Yeah, not much in the way of shooting. You know, duck hunting season is actually over here. It was over on the 31st of January, so that's great. So I'll start picking up and shooting more waterfowl here in the next couple of weeks. Actually went out not that long ago and got some kind of unique stuff at a local place not far from me, where you could literally like touch the ducks and the geese. I mean, they call it the wall of shame, but it's actually really good. So I dropped in there and got a couple decent photos. But yeah, other than that, not too much. We had snow and the water froze out back the cove. So I did some stuff I did some drone work out there, and I got some Bonaparte's gulls, tundra swans, Canada geese, just mixed in with the snow, some buffies, so buffleheads. But yeah, a couple shoots here and there. But other than that, not too much.
Yeah. I mean, I've been away. I just come back actually, which is why we haven't, you know, been able to get together until now. I've just been away in Wales for a week on the coast in South Wales, and one of my favourite places. And we stopped in a cottage for a week, which is literally right on the coast. In fact, I was showing it to you on Google Maps, wasn't I, before we started recording?
Yeah.
Literally right on the beach. So I can open, you know, have the windows open at night, and in the morning you can hear, the tide coming in and the call of oyster catcher and curlew and all these other lovely sort of waders or shorebirds as you refer to them. But so that was fantastic, and I could just roll out of bed, pull my chest waders on, and just go and lie in the sand amongst the rocks. And I had, well, in particular, I had purple sandpiper, a really big group of purple sandpiper that were very confiding, so I could lie in amongst them, as they rested on the shore. So I got some quite nice shots of them. I had other things like oyster catcher and curlew. Couldn't really get very close to, but ring plover were quite good. There was a really big group of those. I got sanderling as well right on the last day. So that was nice to see. So yeah, it's really inspiring trip. I mean, shame about the weather, but it is, it was sort of end of January, beginning of February, and it's Wales on the west. It's obviously on the west coast of the UK, and we all know what the UK is renowned for, particularly in the winter. So there was a bit of wet stuff and a bit of cloud, but actually did quite well considering the weather conditions. So sort of just going through those images now, and I think I took about 8,000 or something
Yeah,
stupid.
that's the glory of the Z9 and the frames per second there. So
Yeah,
you got to
that's the
call it
trouble.
off.
Well, the thing is, it's like when you're shooting with it, you don't want to take it off 20 frames a second because you never know when something's going to happen
Yeah,
that you're going to want to choose from as many pictures as you can get from a sequence. But the problem with that is that even when you're taking sort of stationary birds, if you like, they're just resting or whatever. Yeah, you're just taking 20 frames of them a second.
yeah,
So yeah, it's
and
a
I
bit
don't know about you,
stupid.
Rob, but like when I use Photo Mechanic and when I'm culling, especially those stationary portrait type things, I'm comparing, okay, what's the best shot out of these 5 images? And it's all the exact same image because it happens so fast. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Just
Just choose
five.
one and move on.
For me, is what's the best frame out of these 200 pictures?
Better to have that problem, like I guess, than not having the shot, right? So,
Yeah.
I'd rather have more time to cull. And
But I think that's the other thing as well. You don't realize how many you're taking because you're
oh
not
yeah,
hearing the shutter.
and the memory
It's
cards now you can put, as much
oh
as you
man.
want. It's
I,
basically a rolling hard drive in there. It's 1 terabyte.
well, yeah, I didn't take my laptop and a drive with me because I just thought, I won't take that many. By about day 3, I'd filled up both my memory cards. So I'm back at the house culling the images on the back of the camera, going, I need to create some more space here. Stupid. I just forget. I forget how much memory it takes if you're shooting that amount of images.
There's nothing worse than that. I think you've been there. I've been there. Everyone, I think, who shoots wildlife often has been there where you come across an incredible scene, you're shooting, and then all of a sudden the card is full and you have no other card on you. So you have to go and delete the images you don't want one by one while whatever's happening in front of you
Yeah.
and cursing your. That's the worst.
And if you're taking 20 frames a second, it takes a long time to delete,
Yeah.
a few seconds worth of images. It's crazy. But the price of memory cards, you don't want to buy too many.
Yeah, I mean, all you really need are 1 or 2, as long as you can kind of
Yeah.
cycle them out and back them up and format, and you should be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Z9 takes two. Um, and
Are they
yeah,
CF Express? Yeah, they're 2 CF Express Type B,
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
right? The
yeah,
Z9, yeah.
yeah, Type B. Yeah. So it's the right speed is, but I mean, there are memory cards and there are memory cards, aren't there? In fact, that's a podcast we could do talking about memory cards. But so you
I
need something that's relatively, it writes quickly because
Yeah,
otherwise there's no point in having 20 frames a second, is there? Because you're going to be hitting that
you're right.
buffer before you know it.
Yeah, the
So
read and write speed are really important. I've got lucky. I mean, Delkin. I always buy Delkin, and it's been many years I've been using Delkin. They're not the most expensive, but the read and write speed on them, I think,
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
superior. Yeah, and I knock on wood, no failures yet with Delkin. So I've stuck to them. There's a lot of other brands out there now, Wise, WISE, and some that are cheaper. I get nervous, so I've just
Yeah.
stuck with Delkin.
I forget which ones I bought. I'll have to look it out, but they've been pretty good. They've been pretty reliable
Pro grade is
since I've
pretty
been
good too. They're
Pro Grade.
reasonable.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. Pro Grade.
Yeah,
Those are the ones
I
I
think
bought.
former Lexar, I think they used to be Lexar. People who were in Lexar started ProGrade, or I
Yeah.
don't know what the story is there, but they're pretty decent too.
Yeah, in fact, they're cheaper than the Delkins, and the right speed is. I haven't had any problem with the right speed, and I haven't had any problem with reliability. Touch wood. You know what's going to happen now. Now I've said that, but hey, we'll see. Anyway, so that was a really good trip, and it kind of sparked my, or
You brought back your
it
mojo.
brought back my mojo, because I have to say, I think it's. I'm not sure whether it's an artistic thing, because I think it's not just limited to photography, but hopefully people will sort of get what I'm saying here and understand what I'm saying here. That feeling that when you go out, you just it's really difficult to get motivated to take pictures at times, and you just don't want to take the camera out of the bag. You don't really want to go out. You're not feeling very inspired, so you're going through this sort of period of drought. And I guess, same could be said for artists, musicians, sports people, even. I was thinking about this before we came on air, and I was just writing a few notes for myself. It's a bit like an elite athlete or elite sportsman who, I don't know, maybe you're playing soccer or something like that, and you're a striker, and you know that world class strikers go through these periods where they're not scoring any goals, and then it sort of breeds this I don't know, this lack of confidence starts coming in, and then you just get in this vicious sort of circle which you have to break out of. And then all of a sudden they'll score a fantastic goal, and then they're away again, and they're scoring at will. So it's a
Mm.
state of mind. I'm sure it
Yeah.
is, uh, and
Yeah, it's I like the sports analogy you're talking about, Rob, because I think photography, it's all about momentum, just like a lot of sports. For me, I'll go on these streaks where I'm really hot, I'm shooting a lot, I'm getting some great stuff, and then there's the trough, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. So I think it's very momentum based. It's a good sports analogy because we'll have a couple of months where wow, we're getting incredible images consistently, and then it's like, oh, I haven't had a good shoot, and so long after that. So there's highs and lows.
Yeah, the weather's crappy. I can't be bothered to go out. It's,
Hmm.
but we all know there's always something to shoot in every weather condition that we get. So when you're feeling inspired, and you've had a couple of good shoots, and you feel like you're on top of your game, it doesn't matter what the weather's doing. You'll take something somewhere because you want to be out. But when you go through these sort of periods of where you're lacking this sort of inspiration and this drive, it's really difficult to get yourself out of that place. Uh, you know, I mean, how do you, when you find yourself in that place, how do you go about trying to get yourself out of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought about this before we started the podcast too. I was just thinking, what, because I do have my ups and downs and lose my mojo and have to regain it per se. And I've thought like, what's the reason for that? I thought a little bit about it, and lately, for me, it's all about um, what are the chances? Is there a high likelihood I'm going to get good shots in this session? Meaning, if I get up, I know I have to drive maybe 40 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to get where I want to get. I need to get there before the sun comes up, probably, because you want to be there for the best light. So that means I got to go to bed early, get up early, and do I have a chance in hell of even getting a shot? And if it's high risk, some recently I'm like, you know what, the heck with it. Why do I need to do this? I'm going to drive. I'm not going to have anything on my memory card, so I don't feel as inspired to do that. And then probably what I'll do is I'll shoot locally, out back. I'll take the kayak out in the evening. I'll wait for the, so a lot of it is motivational for me in terms of, okay, but if I know I'm going to drive an hour and there's a bunch of shots I'm going to get, there's subjects that are almost guaranteed, I'm more likely to do it. So that's been a pretty strong factor for me in terms of, is it worth, because I think same for you, Rob. Same here for me. Unless I'm shooting, in my backyard, you have to drive, whether it's a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes a
Yeah.
couple of hours, right? Sometimes I'll drive 2, 3 hours just for a shoot. And, there's that commitment and it's great, but nothing's guaranteed on the other side. Of course, it's wildlife. Nothing's really ever guaranteed, but the chances of success sometimes are higher than others. And that's been a motivational factor for me. Do I want to put all this time and effort, gas, getting up early, going to bed early, and not have a chance and have a very low chance of finding a long-eared owl, for instance, and getting a shot, right? So
Yeah.
that's been driving a lot of my choices recently.
Do you find that, as you sort of progress as a wildlife photographer and you develop your style, these periods come around more frequently? And is it, as I think we were just sort of discussing before we started recording, is it down to the fact that you've sort of come from this sort of, I mean, I guess bird on a stick style of literal photography, where you've done that for a while, and there's no point in taking another picture of, a mallard or, a swan in that same way, because you've got a million pictures of them. So you're looking for different ways to photograph them, and the longer you spend doing it, and the longer that journey, the more you've got to start thinking of new ideas, and you start drying up a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're not taking that bird on a stick style image anymore. I mean, I guess we all still do, but less and less
That's 20
so.
frames a second.
At 20 frames a second, yeah, I got to cull, thousands of pictures of bird on a stick. It's not where I want to be as a
Yeah.
photographer. It's not what I want to be doing. So I've got to keep thinking of fresh and new ways to approach
It,
subjects, and sometimes that can be a little difficult, because you don't. I just don't want to look at another image of a coot on a golden misty lake in the morning, because I've done it like a million times. I've got to look for something else to do with those species that are local and accessible to me. I've got to think of something new, and that
yeah.
becomes increasingly difficult. So
Absolutely. And you're right, Rob, too. Like a lot of people think, okay, well, the coot floating on the water, front lit, is kind of a boring shot after so many years because you've seen it. A coot backlit, even with mist or whatever, yeah, that's not, but that's been done too. Compositionally, that's also a pretty weak image. It's like all the lights there, and that's about it. So it doesn't have a lot going for it. But yeah, I totally agree with you. These areas that I shoot in, that we all shoot in because they're local and they're known to us, we go over and over again. Things become redundant. And when things become redundant, they get boring, and you want to improve upon that. You're looking for different situations. That wall of shame place I told you about for photographing ducks, it's easy. You lay down and you get these shots of canvas backs, widgeon just floating right by, snap. Oh, wow. Years ago, it's like, oh, look what I got, and you, that doesn't cut it anymore. So when I was there, there was like this old sewage pipe that was rusty. I was trying to get some gritty shots and, compositionally more complex frames. And because you try to, when you do that, you come out with a lot less, and that's fine. So if I shoot a couple thousand images, if I get one or two shots I can process, I'm happy with that. Years ago, I would probably process 40 or 50 shots, and most of the stuff was, like you said, bird on the stick, more literal, more redundant. I was happy with it at the time, but that's where I was in my journey, right? We're all moving somewhere
yeah,
photographically.
all those images are repetitive. They're just,
Yeah.
slightly different angle of the same thing. And I'm like you now, that I came back from Wales with. I mean, I said, this wasn't a shoot. This was just, they were. Photography was like a byproduct of the trip, because it was myself and Jennifer just having a break, with Sky, and just chilling out and walking. But it just so happened that I could roll out of bed in the morning and, as I said, put on the chest waders and go and sit amongst shorebirds for, an hour or two, before breakfast, which was fabulous. So I've come away with, I don't know, about 8,000 or 9,000 images. And as you say, if I have half a dozen maybe that I process out of that I'm really happy with, yeah, I'm happy with that ratio, because let's face it, I've got 500 pictures of the same thing.
Yeah. You have to be more deliberate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you do. So I'm happy, but for me, it's spending time like that and actually appreciating nature more, I think, which gives me the inspiration to want to try and portray it and do it justice, and portray it to other people in an inspiring and an interesting way. And again, we were chatting before we started recording, and purple sandpiper is not a bird I've photographed before, or certainly not very well, because I've never really got that close to them.
Mm.
But we had a really big group of purple sandpiper that every morning they'd be there foraging and resting on the rocks, and they're quite confiding. So I could crawl up, take 20 minutes to crawl up to them, and they'd be like 10 feet away, and they were quite happy with me. They knew I was there. They were looking at me, but they were quite happy. They were tucking their heads under their wings and closing their eyes, and they're completely relaxed. And I had to put the camera down and just sit and soak up that atmosphere and that experience and think, how lucky am I to be lying on this beach when nobody else is around and I can just enjoy this. It's just something that you can't buy. It's just
Yeah.
the most amazing thing. And that, I think, is what inspires me, because then you think, actually, I want a memory of this experience beyond simply, the electrical charges in my brain.
Yeah.
And how long
And that
those are
helps
going to keep working, I don't know.
Yeah, and that helps you appreciate it, right, Rob? I mean,
Yeah.
more than just showing up and it's all about the photo. I mean, you being there on the beach, are you going to get the most original purple sandpiper image? If I fly to Yellowstone, am I going to get the most original? So yeah, a lot of that it ultimately comes down to, is the experience, meaningful? And are you bonding with nature? I know that sounds cliche, but I think it's really important, and that helps, inspire us as photographers more so than just being like, I have to get there. I want to get this shot and I'm going to get this shot. When it's all planned out, and you're not living in the moment and you're not taking in the experience, it's not as joyful. It really isn't.
And I think that comes across in the images you take.
Hmm.
I think if you're feeling an affinity with the place that you're in and the animals that you're amongst, I think that then comes out. And if you're allowing yourself to fully immerse yourself in the experience and enjoy it, I think that comes out in the photos that you take. I mean, the weather wasn't brilliant, as I think I've already alluded to. And you know what those dull conditions are like. I mean, they're great for capturing detail because you haven't got the harsh highlights and the contrast to deal with. But they can be pretty bland and colorless, particularly if you've got a bird like purple sandpiper, which isn't the brightest thing. It's a lovely bird, but it hasn't got the bright colors, to add that interest to the frame when everything else is dull. So I was trying to introduce an element of color and interest, and in the end, I use seaweed,
Mm.
out of focus seaweed, to try and bring in a little bit of warmth and a bit of interest into the frame. So actually, I found that quite, that puzzle, to unpick that puzzle and create something reasonable with fairly bland conditions and a reasonably, I don't want to call them bland because they're not, but you know what I mean. They're this sort of bluish gray type plumage to them, and they're not,
Mhm.
they're not the bright colors of the warblers or the, some of the waterfowl that you get. They're fairly, it's designed to, camouflage them amongst the rocks that they're resting in. So
Yeah.
they're going to look similar to their surroundings. So how do you then create an image that focuses on the bird and adds a little bit more interest and color, in the frame? And that was quite difficult, but I found I like the challenge of that. That was, to me, that was something different to what I would normally find myself doing. So
Mm.
I think that's the thing that inspires me, is when I can work somewhere that I've got different challenges, I guess, than I have in some of the other areas that I'm used to, and I enjoy that. And I think that's probably where you're not getting complacent with things if you're shooting in the same places over and over again, but there's only so many new things you can try with subjects and locations that you shot at a lot. And I think,
Mhm.
new locations for me, you talk about somewhere like Shetland, obviously we've chatted about on the podcast before, and we obviously both went to last summer. You can't help but be blown away and inspired by that place. but it's not just the landscape, it's not just the whole feel of it. It's the wildlife itself, and that I guess that when you first experience something like that and a place like that, it makes an impression, and I think that is what drives the inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right, and, being in the moment, being inspired, that's the opposite, I think, of the extreme approach you could take where and I've seen this with competitive shooters where everything is about, "Okay, I gotta get the best image." Everything's planned, and you're not in the moment, you're not inspired, and you have all these expectations set up, and if you don't meet those expectations, you're devastated, right? I've seen that with photographers, and I was like that too, even some years ago, where I would go to a place, and if it didn't go according to plan, I didn't get what I wanted. I'd be like, "Oh, this stinks. Why did I come all this way? I thought I was going to get this," and you beat yourself up. So I think if you're too serious about it and you're overly competitive and you set these unrealistic expectations, you're going to get burned out quickly, and you're definitely going to stop shooting, or you're going to not want to, So a lot of it's just about I know it's about feeling. It's just about being there and, being one and, appreciating what's around you and knowing that whatever nature gives you, it gives you, right? You can't predict this stuff. And sometimes you get incredible moments in front of the lens, sometimes not so incredible, but all in all, it's still the same thing. I mean, you're out there, you're spending time outside, you're being, you're in the moment and you've got a camera. There's nothing better than that. And you
Yeah,
have to appreciate
I think it's fully appreciating, those moments. There's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot
that.
to
Yeah.
be said for that. But do you think also that uh, talking when you were talking about being disappointed at times when things don't go to plan because you've got all these expectations, do you think that's a result of a lot of peer pressure for your own work when you see so many inspiring images on social media and competitions that obviously we've been involved in, um, and you feel this sort of pressure to
Yeah.
constantly produce something new, something fresh, something that sort of is keeping up with the Joneses, if you like, in the photography world. When you see all this inspiring stuff.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I'm not sure it's at the forefront of it for me, but it's part of it. And also too, if you're making a huge financial investment to go somewhere, you want that investment to pay off. I'll give a good example. We went to a couple years ago. This was before the pandemic. We're in Kenya. We were in Samburu. So we're driving around. And we had this driver, and he was nice, but he just took his time and was really slow. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. This is the culture and this is kind of how things go, and I respect that. But it was near the end of the day. We found a leopard family with a fresh kill, and it was an impala kill, and they were bringing the impala up into I mean, Rob, the light was stunning, backlit. The sun was going down, and there was a local. I guess there was a local guide or whatever, and not maybe necessarily professional, and their vehicle got stuck, and there's other vehicles. So you're competing when you're on these safari drives. If something happens, you're competing for location because everybody talks on the radio and all these vehicles show up, and you could either get a great angle or not so great angle. We were there. We saw it happen. And a vehicle was rushing and they got stuck. So they were probably a couple hundred yards away, stuck. And our driver said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry. We have to go help them. It's kind to do that." And I was like, "Okay, well, no, do not move. Let them, we'll help them in a little bit. Give me the next 10 minutes are going to be epic, right?" No, drove out. So we're paying substantial sums of money to be there, right? So I was extremely disappointed. And, so we went and we, got the chains out, helped them get out of this hole they were in. But after that, we lost everything. The shoot was over, right? So, um,
Yeah,
there's other issues at play too. Whenever you have a huge financial and time, because you take time off. If like for me, I work a full time job, so I'm taking annual leave, time off from work. I'm expending a lot of resources to get there. That in and of itself creates peer pressure because you set these expectations. Like, okay, I'm putting all this time and investment and the money I saved up for the trip, and what a bummer if you don't come away with good images. So that can also be a part of it outside of the social media.
Yeah. Does that sort of uh, spark a sort of downward spiral in you in terms of losing your enthusiasm for things over a period of time, or can
It
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 have
it
that
did
effect?
that evening. That driver did not wanna drive for a long time, I think, after that evening. But,
Well, there's
yeah,
always beer.
this is true, yeah. So, yeah, it certainly can, because some of those moments, because we're always chasing that incredible scene, or at least, I always have like this perfect, scene in mind, the bird, the animal, whatever it is. And when you come close to that, it's a high, it's a rush. And then you come down from it, and, you're always looking for that. At least I am in the field. But again, it's just patience. If it happens, it happens. You can't expect it or plan for it.
No, that's the one thing you can't do with wildlife. It'll just do what it'll do. It's like the
Yeah.
weather, isn't it? It'll be what
Yeah.
it'll be, and you just have to
Yeah.
work with it. I mean, I think sometimes some of the some of the best images I've taken have been completely unexpected. You
Yeah.
come across something, and it just so happens that you get a situation that in your lifetime you are never going to get the same. Those elements are never going to come together at the same time. I'll give you an example. You think about mute swans. I mean, the most common subject here, I should think, and the bird that probably people start photographing first, because they're elegant looking things, they're confiding, you get really close to them, there are loads of them around, they're in some quite nice sort of locations. So a lot of people will start, with species like that. So to get a unique-ish image of a mute swan is quite a difficult thing. But I had, well, must be about 3, 4 years ago now. I was out looking for otters, funnily enough, on the local lakes to me here, and they are tricky things. Talk about things that you can't plan for. I mean, they'll be there or they're not there. We're there one morning, they won't be there the next morning. They're never in the right condition. Oh, anyway, and then we'll see one, and then they just disappear. Like Houdini. They're just gone. And you think, how did that animal disappear? Slip under the water, and it never resurfaced anywhere in my line of vision. Anyway, and they just disappear. But so I was out trying to photograph them, and unsuccessfully, I have to say. I did see them, but they just disappeared. And then we had the most amazing light conditions, and a bit of mist. I had these amazing shafts of light coming through a bank of trees, and there were these courting swans, and
Mm.
it was like a stage in a theater, the way this thing was lit with these shafts of light coming in. I'm thinking, please God, just drift into those pools of light. And I was lying down praying for this, and that's what they were doing. They're drifting
Mm.
in and out, in and out. And then there's that moment where they copulate, and the male gets on top of the female, and it looks quite aggressive, but it's really not. And he pushes her completely under the water, and his head goes under the water as well. So most of them are submerged, but then they come up. So they got water dripping off their bills, and they come up in this sort of really nice pose together. So that the pose is mirrored. They're together. There's water dripping off their bills. It's backlit. You've got this mist and these shafts of light, and I'm just thinking, oh, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. You have to make the most of this. And I remember that the images from that there was one out of this. I mean, I got a lot of really nice images from the sequence, but there was one in particular. Was just that moment where they came up and the water's dripping off their bills, and
Mm.
I will never ever be able to repeat that,
Mm.
because it will never
Well, never
happen in the
say
same
never.
way.
You never know.
I don't think so, because you just never get that combination of elements, or it's
Mm.
very, very unlikely you'll get that combination of elements happening again. Because how
Yeah.
often do I don't know how often swans copulate in a breeding season, and how often will it be at that time in the morning with that lighting, with and them
Yeah.
in that play in a particular spot on the lake. It's just not going to happen.
And an event like that inspires you to shoot more, right? I mean, I bet after that happened and you went home and you checked your card and you saw those images, you're certainly inspired to go out and shoot more. It's those types of events, I think, that re-inspire us, right? when they happen.
Yeah, and as I said, the unexpected things, and
Yeah.
I think that's what does it for me. And the other thing that I try and do sometimes, is I try and go out and photograph something different. So come away from birds, for example, and go and photograph plants, or go out with a friend and go and do something like fungi, or say plants, or whatever trees, or whatever it might be. I mean, I've had quite a thing for trees just recently, as we've talked about before. Um, so I think for me, it's perhaps just doing something a little different as well, photographing a subject that I don't photograph a lot, trying to learn a different technique,
Yeah,
do
that's
something
a
in a
really
different
good
way.
point because if I'm not feeling inspired and I decide to go out and shoot with a friend or a friend invites me to shoot, that actually gets my butt moving, right? Because it's like, okay, if it's just me, it's easy to say, you know what, I'm going to sleep in and maybe I'll shoot in the evening and I'll just let this one slide. But if you have a commitment and you're meeting a friend, there's more motivation to go. And I think when you're there and you're in the field, to your point, Rob, you feed off of each other, right? In terms of, hey, well, did you think about shooting it this way? Or I think I would shoot it this way. So having another photographer there or a couple of friends shooting, you all make yourselves better in the field versus if you were just there individual.
Yeah,
I'm mostly a solo shooter. I'll shoot sometimes with folks, but when I do, like Kerm and I shoot a lot, obviously, and we both can kind of feed off of each other's styles. And we Nick Patel, it was myself, Kerm, and Nick actually Patel. We just shot recently that wall of shame place, and
yeah,
when we're all there, we make ourselves better, because we can compare what we're doing and feed off of each other. So I think that's a very rewarding thing in the field. And I think if you have a group of friends or whether it's that you communicate on social media or you keep in touch with in person or get together, that I think helps keep your mojo strong, because you're discussing images, you're sharing images, you're critiquing images, and you keep photography at the forefront. That helps a lot. I've been blessed with that for many years now, whether it's certain online groups I'm a member of, or I just people I've talked to for so many years and exchange images. That helps keep the fire going too. Um, so
yeah.
I,
When you get some good feedback from something that you've shot, then that, to me, that I find that very inspirational. I mean, unlike you, I shoot by myself most of the time because that's the way I am. That's what I enjoy. But there are certain people that I also enjoy occasionally to go out with, and share those experiences. A lot of the judges from Wild Art, for example,
mhm.
I mean, I shot with, I shoot with Vic. Not that she can do too much at the moment, but I've been out with her quite a lot, and I find her approach to things very refreshing. It's a lot different to my own, and I think I say a lot different, but everybody is different. Every photographer is different. They look at, you send 10 photographers out to photograph the same subject, you'll get 10 different results guaranteed, because we all see things in a different way. And I'm with you. I think occasionally, if you go out and shoot with other people, you just pick up so much from each other. You feed off each other, and I think there's a lot to be said for that, particularly if you're in one of those periods of where your performance, where you feel your performance is a bit lackluster, you're lacking that drive and that creativity. Then I think that's a good way to try and get a bit of that back. And it doesn't take much. I find that it really doesn't take much. It's one image, it's one experience. It's a sort of trip out with a friend. It might even be picking up photography books that you've owned for years and going back through those pictures and trying to look for fresh ideas, fresh approaches, and just appreciate photography for what it is. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I used to take a lot of photography to sell through libraries and things like that. My motivation was, to a greater extent, financial, as well as a sort of a personal, you know, not egotistical gain, but that sort of feeling of well-being, that sort of that personal feeling of well-being. It wasn't only for that. There was a financial element to it as well.
Mm.
And I think as that's diminished over the years, because let's face it, you're not making any money as a wildlife photographer unless you're in a pretty niche area. And we will get to talk about making a living from wildlife photography very soon on the podcast, because I know that's been a subject which has been requested quite a lot by people. So we will get on to cover that. But it's very, very difficult. And once that pressure kind of goes, then my focus certainly over the last year or two, has been predominantly just taking pictures for myself
Yeah.
and not giving a stuff what other people think, really. I mean, of course I care. I mean, I like people to like my photography, but it's not as important to me now as it was, 2 or 3 years ago, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm the same way, especially with social media. I mean, if I put an image out and yeah, after so long and shooting and having a good network, you know what a good image is, right? So you don't need Instagram to give you however many likes for that to be redeeming to say, okay, well, this is a great image. I mean, that really has no indication on anything, especially with algorithms, right? I mean, I just posted a chestnut-sided warbler, which is kind of just it's kind of looser in the frame. It's just a shot. The coolest thing about the shot, there was some water in the mouth. Okay, fine, whatever. So I posted it, and it got like 30,000 likes, which is way,
Wow.
way more than I'm used to getting. And I got hundreds of followers. I have no idea why it happened. It's obviously nowhere near um, the level of quality from the images that were posted just right before and right after, and they got a couple hundred likes. So you can't go by social media.
Well, maybe somebody shared it or something. You just don't know, do you? It's
Yeah, David Attenborough, maybe, I don't
yeah,
know. But, just
yeah, your mate Dave.
well, funny story, really quick. There's a Facebook group called David Attenborough fans. I don't know. It's run by some guy. I don't know where he's based out of. Maybe India, I think. But in any event, it's this huge, huge following on this Facebook group. And of course, it's not David Attenborough. And maybe that's what brings people in because they use his face. And, there's probably issues with that. Long story short, the moderator shared a great blue heron shot I took a couple years ago. And it got like ridiculous amounts of likes and shares. And I sold, tons of prints thanks to that. Everybody was messaging me. So anyhow, it was a little bit of a cash haul for me. And it was a David Attenborough imposter, but I won't tell anybody
Oh,
that.
great. But it's amazing how these things happen, isn't it? And it actually, when something like that does happen, although, we always say that, oh, I'm not really too fussed about likes on Instagram. But if something like that does happen and you do get, lots of people commenting on an image, I had that with, well, it's just another amazing experience talking about, amazing wildlife experiences, and that being an important part of the overall driver for photography, if you like, and the sort of mental well-being, which is another subject I want to talk about at some point. Where am I going with this? Oh yeah, so I went down to see the dragonfly roost in Somerset, which is quite a well-known site, and it doesn't happen this way every year. It some years is really good, other years not so much, and I've never really been that lucky with trying to see it. But last year, my word, it it was just the most amazing thing. I mean, thousands and thousands of these four-spotted chaser dragonflies just roosting in these reed beds, where you've got one stem of reed that might have a dozen or 20 insects on it, and then you've got, I mean, it's a reed bed and it's absolutely covered in these things. And before they warm up in the morning, they're just sat there still. And if you're there before dawn or around dawn, it's just the most magical experience. And seeing the sunrise behind them, you get those lovely silhouettes of them, and it's just. But you have to kind of put the camera down and just take it all in. And
Yeah.
I produced it. It was quite a difficult thing to do, actually, to create an image which represented what I was seeing, and the magnificence of it. And I produced I did a black and white vertical shot of a group on the reed beds, just using the sky behind and just blowing it out, and just using the shapes of the dragonflies and the repetitive shapes up the stems. And that got a load of likes. I did well. it did. I know you've done relatively well in a competition recently, haven't you?
Yeah, it was a shot I took recently by accident. Talking about accidental, it was something that happened all of a sudden. Spontaneous. I almost didn't even have my camera with me when I was kayaking on this place, and
Yeah,
yeah, it was a category winner for a French nature competition just recently,
yeah,
which is a pretty big bird competition. The one you're talking about, though, Rob, I love that image. The one in Q Potty.
yeah. So yeah, close-up photographer of the year, which I was a finalist in. See, that's the other thing I think about competitions as well. If you're looking for inspiration and you like recognition for your work, great place to get it. Um, and I think that can give you a bit of a boost as well. It certainly did for me. You think, oh, okay, it's not just me who likes this image. You
And
know,
sometimes it's tough though for photographers who are growing in their craft, right? And they see the winners and they're like, "Oh my god, it's intimidating, right? I could never take that shot. How did they think of that? That would have never crossed my mind. Oh, I'm not going to submit." So you always be wary of that because I know that deflates a lot of people, and especially if they're not selected or or they get an image in the semifinals of a competition, but it's not chosen. And a lot of these things can be deflated, but it's all subjective, right? And we're
oh,
always improving, so try not to
it,
let it. It'll have. I guess my point is, it can have the opposite effect on people too, where they're just totally.
yes, I guess that's true. And I think the art of competitions is to expect nothing.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. Just like the lottery.
Because you'll be disappointed most of the time, simply because it is such a subjective thing.
Yeah, the odds are
And
against you. Yeah,
yeah, the odds are against you, and and I don't think it's any reflection, actually, generally speaking, on the quality of your photography, because a lot of really, really amazing images don't make it through because there's so much I mean, you have no idea. We've talked about this before. You have no idea when you enter a competition what your competition is. You
yeah.
have no idea.
You know what's a good key indicator, though? I think if you're entering competitions consistently and you're consistently chosen for the second round, or you'll get a commended or a high, if your images are consistently cold in the second batch, or you'll get things here and there, that tells you something, right? I think
Yeah.
that's a really good indicator. But if you want to win the gold or the top prize every time, it's not going to happen. Number one, and number two, even if you don't, that's not a good indicator on whether or not your photography is good.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I said, if you are somebody that doesn't take rejection easily, then perhaps competitions aren't for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Steer
And,
clear
and,
of them.
I'll be honest too. Like looking at some of the recent, well, Wild Art's a good example, right? And some of the other photo competitions that are out there. I mean, there's probably, I don't know, I would say maybe even less than 10 like amazing photographers that are out there right now that they're winning a lot, and their craft is just, I mean, they're just the best of the best, right? And then I don't think there's like folks right behind them. It's a pretty big step down to the next tier compared to where
Yeah.
some of these folks are at. They're at a whole different level, and there's maybe like a few, maybe less than 10. You see these
Yeah.
names over and over again, and rightly so. I mean, they're incredible.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That you I don't know what they've got and what they drink, but I know I want some of it.
And maybe a
I mean,
lot of it's, maybe they just have it, it's a combination of being artistic and having an eye and knowing how to work the camera, and
yeah.
and having maybe a lot of it too. And we've talked about this in other podcasts, but just being imaginative, daydreaming a lot, thinking about things, and being curious. Some people just don't have that faculty as much as other people do,
No,
and that
exactly.
might
And
lead to
you
better
you
images.
you judge a lot of competitions, um, and I've been doing my fair share over the last year as well. Not just with wild art, which you guys judge. I mean, I don't, but I've been doing judging for other people, and there's an amazing amount of really good quality photography, but there's the same subjects over and over again, taken in the same way, taken from the same vehicle in Amboseli, wherever, which is a really good example
Their
of
vehicle
stuff that.
wasn't stuck and they
Yeah,
weren't nailing
yeah,
anybody out.
exactly.
Yeah, they got the shot.
Uh, or there are well-known hides that you see the same subjects,
Yeah.
in this photographed in the same way again and again and again. But the things that I try and pick out are the more unusual things, the things that people have thought a little bit more about, and haven't just regurgitated somebody else's photograph that they've seen and aspired just to taking the same thing. And I think this is where I get into trouble with my Mojo, with my is when I get into a point where I can't think of new things. I can't seem to get something new out of the camera, something different to what I've taken before or what I've seen. And seeing so much photography and judging so much, you do see such a lot. I mean, it gives you inspiration and ideas, but I don't want to copy. I want to
Hmm.
create my own twist on things, and it just gets increasingly difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and what you're seeing in these competitions, I mean, we see it. A lot of it's cutting edge stuff, right? It's stuff that I recall some of those competitions over the past couple of years in wild art. Some of the categories I saw some compositions I've never seen before, right? And it's not only is it a great image, it makes you think how the hell did they even do this, right?
Yeah,
What was? Let me look at the EXIF data. What gear was used? So yeah, I mean, it can be very very challenging. I know when you see that stuff because you want to be original and create your own style and um, that's very, very difficult to do. But if you're able to do it, I think it's a plus. The last thing this world needs are more photos. We are inundated with photos. I mean, all you need to do is open up Instagram and you can doom scroll all day and see things that you've seen before years ago in many cases over and over and over again. So if you're gonna share an image to the world, you want it to be unique. And that's why it's unique. It's hard to come up with
yeah, it
something that
is
it really is.
with this age of
Mhm.
social media. And let's face it, I mean, we're all walking around with pretty good cameras in our pockets
Yeah.
with our phones, and some of the pictures I see taken on modern phones are just amazing. I mean, a lot of the time I won't take the big camera out if I'm going on a walk and I'm doing a few landscapes or whatever, and I just want them for my own enjoyment, if you like. I'm not talking about things that would necessarily sell now, uh, but a lot of the time I just take my iPhone and think, well,
Yeah.
I don't need the chiropractor bill for lugging a whole load of gear around with me, um,
The
which actually
dynamic
will stop
range
me.
is great on that too. I mean, you
Oh, it's
cannot
just
beat
incredible.
it. Yeah, it's better than any camera that's out there. I mean, it's wild. I mean, I'll do a lot of sunsets back here, and I always use my phone. Yeah, and I guess I could obviously use my camera too, but more than likely, I have to really bring up the shadows in the foreground or do a composite or whatever, or do a stitch, and the iPhone, boom, one shot. Now, obviously, that's got its own limitations, but you cannot beat the dynamic range on that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use it for wildlife necessarily, but if I'm walking and I'll use it for landscapes quite a lot. As you say, the dynamic range is brilliant, and I'll tell you, the video is just
It is good.
it's
Yeah.
amazing quality. From this tiny little, you actually wonder, don't you, how they manage it from such a tiny little lens and a tiny sensor, how it can be so good.
Yeah.
It's
I thought as these things progress, it would really crush the camera consumer market. But I was reading an article, maybe it was on Canon Rumors. Of course, I'm a Canon shooter. Maybe unfortunately, now that I saw the R1 specs, if it's true. But yeah, I mean, I think Canon had like a record year just recently, in terms of sales going up. So maybe I don't think the phones will maybe destroy the camera market. I mean, other things might eventually do it, but I don't think smartphones will, at least in the near term. So
Well, I don't think you can. I don't think you can replace the feel of well, for me, the Z9 in your hand when you're taking wildlife, and the different lenses that you can attach to that and the different things
yeah,
that it will do, the frame rates, the autofocus, yeah. I mean, let's face it, you can't take a picture of a bird with an iPhone as you can with the Z9 or the R5 or
yeah,
whatever.
you're right. I
You
probably made
know,
the wrong comparison. I was thinking maybe it'd be more apt to say the iPhone or the smartphones would potentially replace like a Rebel, someone who buy like a Canon Rebel, the entry
yeah,
market
the
five
sort of
six
entry
hundred
level.
dollar
Yeah.
camera. Yeah, so that I guess was something in the back of my mind. But yeah, to your point, I mean, it'll never replace. Although for video, if you're out and you're doing B-roll or something like that, and I don't do video, but if you had a YouTube, I see a lot of vloggers and stuff. they'll just use their iPhone, and
Honestly,
it'll
it's
work.
it's I shot a whole video, which I haven't posted yet, um, in Shetland on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly acceptable. You put it up on YouTube. A lot of people probably wouldn't even know
Yeah.
that it's not a proper camera. He says in inverted commas, but the quality is just is amazing, and the versatility of it as well. Just to have that thing in your pocket. And actually, I do use the phone sometimes to get inspired. Because if I see something, okay, it's not going to be a bird, because I'm not going to be taking pictures of birds with my iPhone. It's just not going to happen. It hasn't got the range. It hasn't got all the features that I need. But if I see a plant, or it might be, I don't know, it might be an interesting ice pattern or something like that, I'll often take it with my phone. Or walking on the beach, if you find interesting things like feathers or pieces of seaweed or interesting patterns in the sand, that sort of stuff, I'll take that with my phone,
Mm-hmm.
because
Help
it's
tell a
almost
story
as,
and get a
yeah,
shot. Yeah.
exactly. In fact, I came across these three little periwinkle shells in the crevice of a rock, and there was a sort of yellowish, orangey yellow coloured one, a very sort of light whitish colour, and then a dark sort of brown coloured shell. So and then there was three of them. Three is always a good number in photography, as you know, and they were in this crevice, and the contrasting colors was really nice, and it was kind of the perfect setup. So I didn't have my camera with me. I thought I'll take a picture on the phone and see if I can
Mm.
find it again later, which of course I couldn't. um, but actually, that picture is perfectly acceptable, and
Wow.
I would post that on
Yeah.
social media and nobody would know it was an iPhone. So I'll use it for things like that.
We
But
we judge, well, we both judge, what is it, on the PhotoCrowd platform,
Photo Crowd, yeah.
and there's a few images that I've come across. I'm like, wow, this is really good, and their or their Samsung, well, smartphone images, and
Yeah,
I'm like, wow,
a lot,
it's
lot of them are pets, aren't they? People
yeah,
take actually quite interesting and artistic images by using their phones of their pets, which I always enjoy, actually.
yeah,
When people have used it, in a clever way, and I'll
hmm
always point it out as well, because you have to comment and critique these things that you shortlist. I've just done a few actually. These varying quality, but sometimes you get some really interesting things and some inspirational things. I've just done group of three on black and white wildlife in black and white, and that's been really inspiring.
mm.
Because obviously we talked about that before, but yeah. So I think I use all of these things to try and get me out of these sort of creativity rut that I do get myself into from time to time. Um, anything else that you tend to use, Josh, that we haven't covered? Or
The one, the only, the other thing that comes to mind that I don't think I mentioned before is actually printing. Like, I have my own printer, so, and we're going to talk about this
yeah,
in upcoming episodes. You know, just recently I bought it was a collection of frames, different sizes, kind of like a gallery, kind of a gallery collage type thing, and I printed out some images, mostly local, and I put them up on a wall here in my house, and I loved it. I mean, when you print, it brings me back to the moment, and it wants me to get back outside. Again, I think that, and we've talked a little bit about this, and we'll talk more about it. But when you print an image, it's so final, it's tactile, and it's just it's the final product and outcome of being out in the field and capturing a good image. So whenever I working on prints, I'm framing, that inspires me because I relive the moment of whatever that image. And if you're printing something, it's normally an image you're really proud of, or an image that you feel is high quality. You're not printing, a bird on a stick image that you took recently.
yeah.
So it brings me back to the good moments, and it wants me to get back outside. So whenever I find myself by a printer or doing framing, that's normally a good sign for me.
You can probably hear my dog in the background.
Yeah,
she always
I,
likes to make an appearance.
I agree. I like printing.
It's bedtime, and she always does this sort of barking at bedtime. But doors closed, but she's pretty loud at times. So apologies if it's coming through on the audio. I would, do you know, that's a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is something about printing images. If people don't do it, um, I'd suggest that you look into it, because I'm not going to put most of them on the wall, but I think it's that the word you used was tactile, and that's exactly the word that came to my mind when you were talking about it. There's something that you can't replace that feeling with looking at an image on a screen. When you see it printed on a piece of paper, it brings it alive. To me, it's a living, breathing thing, rather than being, a bunch of pixels on your, and whatever and bits of data on your hard drive. It's actually a physical thing that you've created. You've taken the image and you've printed it, and it's in your hand. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, and I enjoy it a lot. It's just damned expensive to do.
It is, and people have gotten away from that. Everything's digital now, so you upload it on your website or social media. I mean, yeah, it just is a analogy, I guess. Music. I recently got, actually for Christmas, I got a record player, and I
Yeah,
haven't I haven't played around with vinyl records in many years, since I was a little kid, and I've been buying all these old records now, and there's something about it. You put the album on, a couple songs, you flip the record, and you sit and you listen to it. It's not, hey Alexa, move to the next track, or you're on Spotify, or you're going from one to the other. It's a calming thing, and you have to be patient. You take it in. It's analog, right? It's incredible.
yeah.
It's got a great sound
No,
to
it
it.
was it was
Same
that was
thing.
an amazing feeling when I was young. I always really looked forward to that. If some band I like came out with a new album, I'd love going and buying the LP. And it's the album cover was so
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
And then sliding the thing out of the sleeve, and then, as you say, putting it on the player, and then that needle goes down, and you get that little,
Oh, I
you know,
love
and
that sound. Yeah, and it's hard to skip songs, right? You don't want to. It encourages you to listen to the whole album, and it makes you more
as it's
patient.
supposed to be. Yeah,
Yeah, versus
as it's
going on
supposed to be heard.
Spotify and being, at least that's normally what I do. I'm all over the place, and I'm not really appreciating the music. So,
And actually,
same with
there was a real art to albums. I mean, we're going off on a tangent here, but there was a real art to albums, wasn't there? That,
yeah,
when they were printed on vinyl, because the two halves of the record needed to work together. You needed to finish one side, flip it over, and then start the next side. It all needed to kind of fit into place, through that process. And now you don't have that. And as you say, you can shuffle, you can skip, you can do all this sort of stuff. And I like, well, Spotify will just play stuff after you, whatever you've listened to, it'll just
yeah,
dish up some other stuff for you. And quite
yeah,
often I just find myself just listening to that.
yeah.
But anyway, we digress. Josh, it's been a really, really good conversation again. I love these things. So we don't tend, as I've said before, we don't tend to plan. I've just got a few notes written in front of me. That's all, and then we just, you know, we just do this organically, and whatever comes out comes out. But actually, I think we do have some pretty good discussions, and float a few ideas around, and hopefully, you'll find some value and entertainment in it as well. So yeah, I hope that sort of come across in this episode. So, as I alluded to at the start, there are a few things that we're going to do in the next few episodes. One of those is actually on printing. We're probably going to do 2 episodes on printing, aren't we?
Yeah,
That's what we've talked about. One covering sort of printing from home with your own printer, and then 2, hopefully we can get somebody on from the from the perhaps the professional printing world, from one of these printing houses, that can come on and help us, I guess, debunk a few myths, and help you out in terms of, if you are struggling with preparing images for printing and are disappointed with the results, then hopefully we can deal with some of that, because there's a real art to preparing images for print as opposed to for screen. Is a bit of a different process. So yeah, we've got those coming up. We're going to get Georgina on again, aren't we? Georgina Statler,
hmm,
because she has just sent me, I was talking to Josh just before we started recording, the most amazing book. She did For the Love of Birds, which was the first book she did. She's just done For the Love of Flora, which celebrates the flora of Australia, and it is just the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time. It's got a lot of, well, they're all her pictures. So we're going to talk to her, and I think the idea is, maybe that sort of transition from bird photographer to taking on something new like flowers. So that's coming up. What else have we got lined up? Oh, we were going to do
Kaiser Yari, right? With the
Kaiser and Yari about photographing in extreme conditions, and also making a living from wildlife photography. We're going to talk about that too. That might be the next thing we record. I don't know. It depends on the schedule. And we'll talk about that after we stop recording, Josh, and try and line something up. But yeah, talk about making a living from wildlife photography, which I know is a popular subject because it's something that's becoming increasingly difficult as time goes on, and the wildlife photography gets more popular, but there are ways of doing it. So we'll get on. We'll talk about that. But what's anything coming up for you in the next couple of weeks, Josh?
Just some local shoots. I'm going to try to get some sea ducks here. I'm dying to get some good scoter shots, so I'm going to try for scoters here in a couple of weeks. And before you know it, I mean, we already have early spring migrants. Red-winged blackbirds are coming back, American robins. So before you know it, migration's going to be in full swing here pretty soon.
Yeah, well, it's all the songbirds are starting to rev up their voices, as it were, in the around me. So you can feel that spring it's a stone throw away. It's all starting to happen. So I must get my nest boxes up actually this weekend. I bought some new nest boxes last year, so I've got to find some locations for those around the garden. So I made a job for the weekend. So yeah, I spring around the corner. Well, snowdrops are out and almost over actually where I am. I haven't done any photography with them this year at all yet, having been away. But hopefully, I might get half a day doing that at some point. Well, it'll have to be soon because they'll be over. And then it's sort of really looking forward to all the stuff coming up. In the spring, as I said, the migrants arriving, the birds starting their courtship. You never know. I might get those mute swans again. Could happen. But all that sort of thing to look forward to.
An encounter.
Yeah. And there might be otters around as well. I ought to have a look for those before the winter really is over, because winter's the best time, to have a go at them. So yeah, it's just for me, it's going to be local stuff because I've got no trips planned now until June. So yeah, it'll just be a bit of that, I think. But yeah, well, Josh, interesting discussion as always. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, sure thing. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you've got something out of that. And we'll line something up again pretty shortly, and yeah, we'll get a bit more prolific in the next few weeks. So it's apologies for not getting anything out, for a while before now. But anyway, I hope that's been enjoyable, and thanks for listening. Don't forget to give us a rating, give us a like, give us however many stars you have to give us on these things. 5-star rating. Yeah, give us a 5-star rating if you enjoy it. Yeah, and share it all. Share it with your friends as well if they don't know about the podcast yet. And of course, keep those suggestions coming in for future episodes, because it gives us some inspiration for themes going forward. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you all again next time.
Take care, guys.
You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.